Marcy, Skylight, Gray, Cliff, and Redfield done. Now the long walk back to the lodge. 3:55 a.m., just signed in. Santanoni Range, let's go. The wind is whipping here in the Seward Range today. Just finished the Macomb slide and my legs are on fire. Well, I fell victim to the floating logs again. Made it to the top of East Dix. Peak number 3 of 5 for today here in the Dix Range. Avalanche Pass. On top of Rocky Peak Ridge. It's like a hurricane up here. Rain and wind here on Tabletop. Whiteface, number 6. Muddy day here on Street and Nye for number 7 and 8. Sunny and blue on Haystack. Algonquin, up in the clouds, number 18. Gothics, number 22. Panther, number 38. Allen, number 45. 7:12 a.m. Big Slide, Adirondack 46er. You're listening to the 46 of 46 podcast. Becoming an Adirondack 46er is a lifetime-sized goal for many people, and for good reason. The 46 High Peaks consist of 46 mountains with elevations over 4,000 feet in New York State's Adirondack Park. The Adirondacks were created in 1892, and it's a 6 million-acre state park consisting of both public and private land, and in 1885 was constitutionally deemed a forever wild forest preserve. While only a state park, the park's actually larger in size than Yellowstone, Everglades, Glacier, and the Grand Canyon National Park combined. The first 46ers were brothers from New York City, Robert and George Marshall, and their guide and family friend, an Adirondack local named Herbert Clark. They had the idea and began hiking the high peaks starting on Whiteface Mountain, August 1st, 1918, and completed the 46 on Mount Emmons, June 10th, 1925. The 46ers as an organization date back to 1936 and now have over 11,000 finishers on the roster. Hi, and welcome to the 46 of 46 podcast. My name is James Appleton, and I'm going to take you through my journey as I summited all 46 high peaks in one summer. Throughout this podcast, you'll hear what mountains I hiked together, what trails I chose to take, some times, mileage, what I saw, and other stories about my encounters on the trail with nature, other hikers, my gear, my faulty gear, and pretty much everything in between. I've split each episode up according to each hike, so one episode equals 1 day hike. This way you can freely bounce around to different episodes to utilize the podcast for entertainment or use it as another trip report as you research future hikes that you're planning. I broke the 46 high peaks up into 17 days of hiking, which I actually completed in 16 day hikes because while I was on top of Mount Marcy, I decided to merge another day with that current day, something I don't recommend. I didn't do any camping, just in and out each time, car to car, and my first hike was May 18th, 2018 with, you guessed it, Cascade and Porter, and my final hike was September 3rd, 2018, Labor Day, where I finished on Big Slide. A little bit about me. I'm 32 years old with a wife and child. I have a career in the film and television industry as a production sound mixer and a boom operator. I hold the microphones on the boom poles. I grew up in Lake Placid, New York, and I still live here in the Adirondacks. Growing up in Lake Placid, becoming a 46er is a very big deal and something that it seemed only the hardcore people would ever accomplish. Hiking was never much of an interest as a kid because of that, since it was 46 or bust. And seeing the mountains everywhere you go around town make them seem pretty normal, and they kind of lose their majestic qualities, unfortunately. Like anybody who grows up here, though, I had hiked a handful of mountains for one reason or another, such as Mount Joe 1 million times, Cascade 3 or 4 times, even once on a school field trip, but I never once did Porter. In any of those times, never once. I had hiked Street one spring with my brother and his wife because he wanted to, and since I didn't want to let him be better than me, I decided to tag along, and I barely made it, but I made it, despite being so out of shape. Another summer, I hiked Gothics with some friends, and that's about it for successful hikes. Now, as I mentioned, the out-of-shape part, I've also had multiple very unsuccessful hikes here in the Adirondacks as well. I once went with my brother and his wife again up Mackenzie Mountain as the Saranac Lake Sixer hiking challenge was relatively new, probably in 2013 or 14. Again, I barely made it up. It was miserable because hiking mountains that are too big for your current shape is always miserable, so starting with smaller mountains is what I should have done, but I just went, even though many would consider Mackenzie a small mountain. Anyways, on the way down Mackenzie, I experienced what I later learned was called bonking. My entire body just stopped working. I couldn't move. Mid-step, it just stopped working. It's a unique feeling when you're telling your legs to step and they just won't. They will not move. Like so many hikers in the Adirondacks, I was severely unprepared for this hike and I paid the price. Turns out I was insanely dehydrated, so I downed all of my brother's Gatorade and I eventually made it out. Very slowly, but we made it. Fast forward a couple years, I went hiking up Big Slide, one of the quicker High Peaks hikes, with the same friends that I hiked Gothics a few years prior. And after about 40 minutes of swearing I was going to die and was seeing a bright light with angels coming to take my fat, dead out of shape body away, I embarrassingly turned around. I turned around. I told them I couldn't do it, and despite their encouragement, I was not having it. I was going back to the car, so I did. Terrible. Flash forward about 4 years, and thanks to hundreds and hundreds of sets of heavy squatting and heavy deadlifting and the sport of powerlifting in general, I'm now in much better shape physically, cardiovascularly, and I'm much stronger. In the spring of 2018, after finishing my latest movie and being home for a few weeks before the next job, I decided to complete the Saranac Lake Sixer Challenge that I had put off for so many years. So I set out and hiked Ampersand one morning, and what do you know? It was significantly easier than I expected. I'd remembered hiking being much more physically difficult for me. With that successful day on the trail, 2 days later I went up Scarface, and the next day I finished the Sixer with St. Regis Mountain, my first Adirondack fire tower. And what would you know, 5 years after I started, I finished the Saranac Lake Sixer, averaging just over one mountain a year. Pathetic. Unless you're still going and it's taking you that long, in which case keep going. Just kidding, it's not pathetic. Keep going, that's awesome. Keep going. And the very next day I hiked the Tupper Lake Triad, great little mountains. So with these smaller challenges completed and a little confidence in me, it only made sense to begin tackling the high peaks, and thus began my journey to becoming a 46er. Thanks for listening to this episode, and now that you have some background on me, tune into the next chapter where I'll begin my quest to becoming a 46er with Cascade and Porter. But not without a quick pit stop at the Porta-John first to start the journey. But that's for the next episode. Remember to always leave no trace, do the rock hop, and if you carry it in, carry it out. See you on the trails.